Welcome back to Disenthrall. I am Patrick Smith. Today we have another open door policy discussion. So let me just introduce him first and then we'll get into it. This is going to be he's on by phone, not video, so you're just going to be looking at me during this call. But his name is Eric Belzy. He is a meditation teacher and a musician in Denver. He was raised center-left, but leapt the mental hurdle in 2013. He says he has a tiny but hopeful expanding study group for anarchists in southern Denver. Hopefully, maybe we'll get some links on where people can locate that if you're looking for fellow anarchists in Denver. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. So I guess, why don't we start with who you are? So we already kind of got the brief introduction, but you'd label yourself a voluntarist, anarchist, what?
As you know, it's a sensitive word. It's so off-putting to the people who think it means chaos. You want chaos? So I'll call myself a voluntarist, but people who understand that anarchism is actually the most peaceful possible political approach, I'm an anarchist. Voluntarist is a good word, but then people blank on that. They don't understand what that means either. So, in general, I'm not saying I'm against all labels. I think labels can be useful, but overarching, I feel that most people understand this. Most people don't attack other people when they walk down the street. Most people don't set up things to defraud other people. They're already here. That's how I feel. Most of the people I encounter in my life are already here. They just don't go quite far enough. They just don't understand that they've granted this extra privilege to, people because of magical voting booth rituals.
Very well said. I don't disagree with any of that. In fact, I guess I found you on in a response to a post on Amanda's Facebook page, who is Larkin Rose's wife, and she had reposted a meme from the Disenthrall page that I have on screen now. It says, well, if voting is a waste of time, what's your solution? Me, guillotines, them, Pikachu face. So that was one of our most successful memes in recent times in terms of shares and likes and whatnot. And it was, custom made by one of our contributors that helps publish to the Disenthrall page that also participated in the Yellow Vest Guillotine March that we put on here in Dallas a while back. So when I saw your comment or your post in the comments of that meme, unlike what most always happens on the internet where people start, raging back and forth with useless arguments in the comments, endlessly, where no one learns anything or where friendships are destroyed and nothing of value is created. I like to ask people, invite them on the show. I tell people I have like an open door policy to have these conversations because this is how we grow, right? So, your post, I would just like to read it for people, and then I'll kind of give the floor to you to maybe expound on what you meant, and we can have the discussion. So, your post says, I know you're joking talking to Amanda about posting this meme, but this particular line of joking is wildly antagonistic to a principled-based anarchism. It is the exact opposite of it. Like that's kind of my setup. If you want to take it from there, go for it.
Yeah, the guillotines are really interesting, and I am happy to find out that you were involved with this march. I was invited to this march on Facebook. Amanda knows I'm a huge fan of them. I've been to Candles in the Dark, and I have most of Larkin's books, and so I'm very aware of this, and I can say that Larkin was the one who, I describe in my little intro as leaping the mental hurdle. That's what I, term what a lot of people call the awakening, but awakening is such a pretentious kind of off-putting word too, that, that there is this sort of switch inside our heads that, once you go over it, you can't really go back. You may have to make some allowances to deal with the fact that we're in a very paradoxical realm, but you can't return to thinking that, mental slavery is a positive way to organize most of your energy in my life, in your life. But so I've followed them for a long time, and I guess Amanda knows that, and she invited me via Facebook to this Texas Yellow Vest March, and I was very intrigued by that, by both symbols, both the symbol of the yellow vest and the symbol of the guillotine. And so, without doing too much of a lecture here, I'd like to expand on both of those symbols for someone who loves liberty, if that's appropriate.
Absolutely. And just so you know, this is not the first time I have spoken with somebody that didn't think the Yellow Vest March was appropriate. And I welcome the discussion, and I'm happy to attempt to explain it. And I'm also happy to be wrong. So hit me.
And I'm happy to listen to your explanation.
Sorry to interrupt. The last thing I would say is that I'm right there with you on Larkin Rose and Candles in the Dark. As you may or may not know, we just hosted what might have been the last in-country event of Candles in the Dark here in Dallas, literally this past weekend. And just for those that may or may not be aware, we recorded that. Disenthrall and Kaysen recorded that Candles in the Dark, and we will be turning it into an online course or presentation or seminar that you'll be able to take in the near future. So I think, I wasn't prepared with that, but we can have a link in the description after this video goes up for the people that want to sign up with their email to be notified when that video is ready. So sorry for that interruption. Please continue.
Yeah, well, for anyone listening to this, it is unbelievably special and important. And, he and she, they are an amazing team. And they have come to a new level of understanding this. And I mean, that's kind of a lot of what I'm directing at here, that, this is, a non-aggressive, and I watched your stuff around Adam Kokesh and about how the NIP is very important to you. I think it's a very important basic principle of this. And, that's what Larkin and Amanda are doing with Candles in the Dark is a advanced instruction on how to actually apply this when communicating with other human beings. This basic idea that most human beings are already here. Most human beings do not go around smashing other people and stealing their wallets. There's very few human beings. There are human beings that do that, but most of the people you're going to encounter in your day-to-day life are not psychopathic. They agree with the basic thing. Hey, let's not smash each other's stuff. Let's not break each other's stuff. Let's not steal from it. So anyway, on the Yellow Vest front, to talk about Europe first, that's the source of the movement, and France has been its epicenter. And there's an excellent video on YouTube. Maybe you can add the link to this. If have you ever heard of Truth Stream? You're aware of Melissa and Aaron Dykes?
No.
Okay, well they're pretty awesome truthers, and they have a video called "What's Really Going Down in Paris," and they went to Paris to do some filming of something else. It wasn't like, we're going to go and cover the movement for, it was just they literally physically stumbled into these protests with all of their video equipment, trying to go for something else there, some other historical stuff they're doing. I'm not sure exactly what it was for, but they said, okay, here we are, and they got those street scooter things and literally rode them into this protest and learned a lot. And they've got a video on YouTube called "What's Really Going Down in Paris," and I'm not going to condense the whole thing, but they make it really clear that this movement is co-opted. These protesters do not understand that they are pawns being played by much larger forces. These larger forces need a particular type of chaos to bring their plans to fruition. In the coverage, I saw the protesters, they were doing things in the direct service of the 2030 agenda. I assume you and most of your listeners know what that is.
Can you give us a really brief description for those that might not?
Okay. The 2030 agenda is the update of Agenda 21, which, quickly condensed, and depending on how far you're willing to go down this rabbit hole, but it is a global plan to basically contain humanity in large, packed urban centers interspersed with huge areas of wild countryside where people aren't allowed to do things like own guns or use motor vehicles anymore. I personally think a huge amount of the recent panic about climate change is about taking fossil fuels out of the hands of ordinary people and reserving them only for, the elite of the elite are allowed to drive around in vehicles and control their own worlds. But it's a complicated thing. It requires a lot of research. But, for example, and I'll talk a little bit about this, the personal automobile will be banned under Agenda 2030. They want to end the idea that people can own.
I bet we could spend the whole show on this. I just wanted to get a quick summary, and then maybe we could, because we'll be here all day and I only have about an hour. So if we could, so let me then just try and describe what I guess what the viewers are watching in the background here, and kind of set up what we did, and you know what? Actually, let's start with your impression of what we did, because I think that's probably the more important here. What do you think we did, and why do you think we did it, and what do you think came of it?
I can only speak at a distance. I did not physically witness these things. I quote unquote I've witnessed them through videos on the internet because I'm really interested in what this movement does. And simply put, a lot of people put on yellow vests, and you guys built a guillotine. I never finally did see a photo of the actual guillotine. I don't know how large or impressive it was. And did a march to a courthouse. And I back in the days when I believed more in protesting, we did that in Denver here a lot. We went down to the city and county building here for the state capitol, and walked around and hopefully connected with like-minded people, and hopefully shouted at the villains who were ruining our lives. So that's the best I can do with being at a distance here.
Yeah, sure. So did you see anything wrong with that?
Yeah. I have a problem both with the yellow vests. I don't think this is a good group to join forces with it, or as a symbol. I mean, the reason that the people in France are using is that they are, one of the reasons is that they are all required them in their cars by some law, so they all have these things already. I've seen, again, a lot of this is mediated through Facebook, but like advertisements that say, what are you going to do now that you're not voting? And how are you going to, and like this guy holding up this bagged yellow vest, where you can see the 3M logo, one of the largest chemical corporations in the world. It's like, wow, okay. That's just the clothing. But like, the French yellow vests, like one of their main demands was a hike in the minimum wage. Now, a lot of people on our side of the fence here know something about economics, and this doesn't really help. It doesn't really work. If you're trying to get, poor people more money, companies, they just routinely stop hiring low-paid workers. And more automation is being deployed to fill these jobs. So, grant me this is a very complicated issue of how to get people better compensation for the lowest skill work. There's a lot of critical thought and knowledge of economics involved here, and it doesn't easily lend itself to yelled slogans, we want more money. Okay, where's it going to come from? Someone else.
Yep. Was there anything else about the march in Dallas that you disagreed with?
Yeah, and then the guillotine. We can get into that a bit. That's what our original post was, on our what I was originally exchanging with Amanda about, and that now I know that you were the source of that meme. I have huge problems with the guillotine. The guillotine is a very fraught symbol that has numerous drawbacks. First of all, the idea of killing a few people or threatening to kill a few people, this idea that that's going to have a strong impact, it's going to possibly change, it's been evolving to its present for thousands of years, that's kind of hopelessly optimistic. This idea that they haven't been sufficiently frightened into doing the right thing, it doesn't really hold up under scrutiny. And this is, I'm so glad you guys did Candles in the Dark. That's what this is about. How do you change? What causes you? When people threaten your existence, does that really open your heart to listen to their somewhat difficult ideas? And so that's just one problem with the symbol. Another one is, this kind of killing that the guillotine represents, is where a mob identifies someone as the bad guy and then chops that person's head off. No, this is a kind of instant summary justice. There's no due process, no evidence, no testimony, just the deliberately created anger of a mob, uncontrolled by any of these pesky things like morality or truth. Is that where we want to live?
I don't think I disagree with a single thing you've said so far on this call, until that very end thing. I think for hundreds of years, the guillotine was the preferred by the people capital punishment method at the end of their justice system. It was, for the vast majority of its use, it was not mob rule. It was the king's justice system in place, which, granted, was terrible and biased, but it certainly wasn't mob rule. It was only a couple instances in which the mob utilized that weapon in that way. That's the only disagreement I have with you. Okay. Let me, because I think most people that have these thoughts that you have about this event weren't aware of our intentions for the event. Our intentions weren't to scare any government agents or employees into giving us freedom. Our intentions weren't to convert any employees in the courthouse into voluntarists. Jim Jesus donated $2. Thank you, sir. How can states be real if our money ain't real? So we'll get to that later. Our intention wasn't to change hearts and minds. Our intention wasn't to create new voluntarists. Our intention was, just speaking about the guillotine and the event in general, was to give people sort of a cathartic opportunity to threaten the people that threaten them on a daily basis. So the event was for the participants, 100%. Not even 1% of it was for anybody inside that courthouse. And then maybe 15, let's say 5 or 15% of it was to get media attention so that we could point their cameras at the jury nullification message that we had there. As for the yellow vests, it's important to remember that, this event was planned and executed in the very first week or two after the news broke about the Yellow Vest marches in France, when the only message that was out in America was that there are people fighting against their government's invalid, immoral controls on their life. And there was a rumor circulating, memes circulating about a guillotine being rolled out in the streets of France. And so there's a certain art in planning these events if your goal is media attention. And one of the strategies is to jump on existing headlines and co-opt them. Just in the same way that you say this movement in France was co-opted, we were also co-opting it for our own ends. And we were co-opting it early on at a time before anyone knew about, the what was it, the 20 some odd demands of the Yellow Vesters, which were mostly socialistic, communistic garbage that, we would not want to be associated with. But the Yellow Vests plus the Guillotine got the news there and successfully got us about a minute of airtime on news where we were able to describe jury nullification to the general public, which is a huge win in that book from a strategy perspective. And the symbology of the Yellow Vests wasn't even highlighted. The Guillotine was only there, it got the media's attention. And then, we walked up to the steps of the courthouse. We plopped that tool of murder, same as most other tools of murder. And this is part of my speech. I don't know if you listened to my speech. That video is available on my channel at the event. But I talked about this exact point that, the tools that we carried in that event, like the AR-15s and shotguns and so many other weapons that people were also carrying next to the guillotine, was there to just assert our existence as people and to remind, if we were sending a message, like it was for the people to just have that opportunity to send that message that, there might be a line. There might be a line in which we would need to defend ourselves from the tyrants. And it's sort of a bolstering self-expression of existence in the world in a way that, as a non-slave, so to speak. So, and I think we were successful in that. We got a bunch of people together. They had a great time. They asserted themselves. We had some good talks on liberty, freedom, what it means to defend yourself against an immoral, controlling government. And we also got a little bit of airtime for the jury nullification. Any association with, certainly the guillotine's been used for terrible reasons sometimes in the past. It's also killed hundreds of actual evil bad guys. Just like the AR. It has been used for terrible things in the past, and to some people is a symbol of, tyranny, and to others it's a symbol of freedom. And there's nothing wrong with using weapons to making that point. Making the point that, weapons are tools, and it's okay to threaten the bad guys with them. It's okay to, if your intent to, certainly, if you're trying to candles in the dark somebody, you may or may not want to lead with threats. I mean, obviously not. But if you're not trying to, if you're trying to make a statement to other people not being threatened, to people watching, that had no idea it was even an option on the table to speak in resistance to the violent thugs that control us. Well, you just put that on the table in their brain. You just said, there's people that actually think and talk and march about resisting. Wait, why would they want to march in resistance? Is this government not moral? Well, let me examine that. And so, maybe putting a few cracks in a wall that somebody else can come along with later and candles in the dark into voluntarism. So the march, I would just say this, and I won't repeat myself anymore, but the march was for the participants and maybe to a small degree the people watching.
Yeah, and I support the jury nullification, message delivery. I support the open carry message delivery. But yeah, we're in this vast gray area, which Larkin has talked about many times. Like sometimes he bats people around the head with the truth, and then he's also developed an unbelievably advanced and sophisticated system to gently coax people into it. So you made a good case for the batting people around the head with it. I hope that the dice you rolled by doing it this way, I hope that the jury nullification message, reached a few more people. And, people are shocked to find out that, oh my God, juries actually, built into the system. There's They don't have to rule the way the judge tells them they are supposed to rule, or they don't have to rule the way the lawyers tell them that they're supposed to rule. They can actually give a judgment on the nature of the law itself. Wow. So yeah, if that tactic got you a few more ears and a few more eyes, you know, I can't fault you for it. I'm glad to actually hear your defense of it. It's not one that I would choose. I wonder. Yep, some people were maybe heard that message, but a number of people, who knows how many people were like, these people are nuts. What they think we need a guillotine, and yeah, this is a tightrope walk we're all making all the time once we've left the mental hurdle, and I can't tell you how you should do it or how you should act.
And I think we can both understand that there is no one way. Like the guillotine and the rowdy, in-your-face sort of resistant activism is absolutely going to reach certain people that would not be reached by my 4-hour philosophy streams. And the philosophy streams are going to reach people that the guillotine stuff wouldn't reach. But again, the march was for fun and catharsis, probably primarily. Like the people that showed up, man, we had a good time. And it's like there's a group on Facebook, and it's called I forget what the exact name is. It's like the group where we pretend we're statists. I don't know if you've heard of this group, but there's like 1,000 people in it, and it's only a week old. And it's just a bunch of voluntarists in there being like, hashtag America, back the blue, just getting out all that crap that we deal with. We're just kind of like, it's like self-therapy. We're just posting all this garbage in this group, having a great time, laughing at the stupid, at seeing how terrible we can role play a statist. It's just a good time. That's so important, and that's really missing from a lot of activism, is just the moments in time to cut up and have a good time, but also to like assert yourself. Like there was somebody there that had never marched with a weapon before, and it was a woman that I respect very much, and she had just never done that. She had come from like the Libertarian Party, maybe sort of path. And this was a new way of existing or asserting her self-ownership that she hadn't tried before. And man, that's so powerful. That's so important to just be like, look, I exist, and you're not going to fuck with me. And here is the tool, and I have the tools with which to prevent you from doing so at the time of my choosing. That's just like asserting your existence. But to speak on the other side, I'll agree with you. The yellow vest thing, like you said, it was like a week or two after this event. Their list of demands came out, and it was all socialist garbage. But at that point, it was kind of over and done with, and it's not like we're doing these every week or anything. That was the only time, and we probably wouldn't do it again, actually, just because of what it turned into in France. But we still have the guillotine, and we might use that. Again. We thought about putting it on tour and taking it to all the areas in which the government is overstepping its bounds. So again, that's
a lot of areas.
Yeah, right. That's kind of everywhere. But and that's just, and it's really like it's these marches. Like you're right. Like, and I just talked about. You probably didn't see this, but I literally just finished a stream before this one, where we spoke with a local Dallas, Texas voluntarist that flew to Hong Kong to participate in the resistance on the streets to help them fight the communist China government.
I did see it.
Good. And I forgot where I was going with that. I lost it.
I could add. I did watch it, and I by no means do I think all protest is foolish or useless, but Hong Kong is a different place than America. I mean, we know, I can't speak for you, but I know how far the mainstream middle of this country is from even putting a toe in starting to understand what's actually going on. And I think, for me, I've resolved, the only way to get them there is person by person, the people in my circle right around me, demonstrating to them, both through my words but my deeds, how I live, how I care for them, how I care for, my wife, my wife's son, that this thing, which people have been told was chaos and scary and nightmarish, is actually the most developed form of human love and concern that we have.
I remembered what I was going to say. Where I was going with that was, we talked about on that last stream the uselessness of most American protests. Nothing changes. And so to protest with an idea that, the government's going to care about you yelling on the streets is kind of absurd in this country. Hong Kong is different in that they have like 25% of the entire population doing it. So that's probably a little more powerful in terms of what the government listens to. But here in the country, even if you get 1 million people together, the government literally does not care. Nothing changes. Nothing really comes of that other than, and this is what we knew going in. And again, our purpose was not to change. Our purpose was to catharsis and bolster and just have a good time with friends. And that is something strengthening the bonds between the people that showed up to that thing, strengthening the bonds and the relationships between the people that are willing to act in some capacity of activism is important. That is something that is helpful and useful. But the act of the actual march itself, of course, did nothing. I agree with you. But I not only do I agree with you, but I'm letting you know that wasn't even our purpose because I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, and people got to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. You bring up a really valuable point about reaching out. There is a group that saw that and was psyched. And oh my God, these people exist, and hopefully they came to your channel or, your events or, so I can't sit back and continue to be intellectually consistent and say, what you're doing is wrong. I don't know. I don't finally know how we're going to sort out this mess, which, I believe has been in the making for a long time, since the first time there was an agricultural surplus and someone said, hey, if you guard this from people, you can have some. Literally, I think that's how long this idea of policing and legislating and controlling has been going on. And so I really don't feel like it's going to be an overnight turnaround. I feel like we can turn it around, but I don't expect it's going to be next week.
Yeah. The last thing I'll point to is another major form of our activism, and I won't go at length in it because I've talked about it so many times on this channel. Have you heard of Feed the Need, the Feed the Need event that we do here?
Yes. Is this where you give away a bunch of stuff while you open carry?
We feed the homeless because it's illegal in Texas to do so, and we do it armed in defiance of the law.
Yes. That's an amazing thing. That is an unconfusing public gesture to make.
Much clearer symbology on that one, and that one is certainly not only to do good in a practical sense for the actual people we're helping, but it's also making a very loud statement to the general public about what the Second Amendment is for. In their language, in their conception of where rights come from, the Bill of Rights and whatnot. When you look at a normal person and you say, the Second Amendment is not for hunting. The Second Amendment is, you could say it's for, resisting a tyrannical government, but it makes a lot more sense to a normal person to say, look, the Second Amendment is for feeding the homeless when the government makes that illegal. That's what the Second Amendment is for. So yeah, and if you wanna join us in Dallas, we're I think it's first week of December, first weekend in December, 7th, I think. I don't know, I'd have to check. But you're welcome to join us for the event.
Okay, I've never been to Texas.
Well, now you have an excuse.
Exactly. All righty. Well, yeah, I think I think if I could share one more thing before we're done here, or
Sure, yeah.
so obviously I'm aware that it's a lot harder to put on some kind of public attention-grabbing event than it is to sit back and criticize someone else's public attention-grabbing event, those jerks down in Texas, they did this thing with this guillotine, and what do they think, and so at some level I'd like to share what I am for and what I think, not just what I'm against, but I'm pretty convinced, that I've spent years in active contemplative practice, and trained as a meditation teacher. I'm convinced that this is the single most effective step on the path to integrity and self-care that we have. That this very strange ability, and it's ironic. So a lot of the stuff I'm sharing with you, I went on Michael Storm. I don't know if you're aware of his show, Toward Anarchy, and we were talking a lot about this conflict between, do something or doing nothing. At least they're doing something. When someone could come back at my critique of your event with, at least they're doing something.
Note that I didn't say that.
Okay, you didn't. And I just thought a fair amount about this contrast between doing something and doing nothing, and it's kind of ironic for me because, seated meditation or prayer, if you want to put it in a religious context, you can. If you want to put it in a secular context, you can. It's basic capacity to be alone with your own thoughts without intense judgment. It looks to the average person walking by like you're doing nothing. It looks intensely like doing nothing, and yet I think it's one of the most effective somethings that human beings in general, but particularly people on the liberty path, can do to actively work with the voices in their head and, hear them out completely in a state of silence. It's pretty amazing. So anyway, I just think it's an interesting contrast, and that's what animates most of my work in the world now, is trying to help people understand that there is a way through this tangled morass between our ears.
I agree that there's definitely more than two forms of activism. Before I continue, I have to faint. We just had a donation from EG, $100. He says, all the best. Sir, thank you very much for your support again. I don't even know what to say. Like, who does that? Who does that? You're insane. Thank you. If there's anything you need, if there's any topic you'd like me to discuss, you get to the front of the line anytime you want. Just let me know, please. Yeah, so when there's a certain person that I've recently encountered that uses the argument that you're talking about, where so there's a valid use of that criticism, and there's mostly invalid use of that criticism. Like, oftentimes people that are taking action get this negativity from people that don't do anything, saying that they're doing it wrong, they don't like it, it's ineffective, blah, blah, blah. It's just like this background noise from people that, want to have an opinion but don't actually put their ass where their brain is and do something. And I think that's a valid criticism. Like, if you're constantly coming at me with, oh, you argued that wrong in your YouTube channel, oh, what you're doing is crap, oh, your protests, your feed the need, whatever. If what I'm doing is wrong, but you're not also doing something, then I don't don't really give that much weight. But on the other hand, there's been since you're aware of the Adam Kokesh stuff, you know, when I put out those videos, I sat back and I've been waiting just to see kind of what his strategy would be, because he's a smart guy, and I knew, you know, there was going to be some kind of strategy, and it seems to be every time I mention anything, you know, they say that all I do is be negative and tear other people down, and that is the extent of my activism, unlike what they do, where they're actually working in a way that can make real change and actually take down the government, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's this kind of comparison where I'm not doing anything but being negative, and they are doing all of the actual, you know, practical, real activism. And that is just manipulation. It's a non-argument. It's not valid. In fact, when you do something bad, and then someone calls you on it, the person being negative isn't the one doing the calling. It's the person doing the bad thing. Like, yeah. that's the negativity. Anyway, kind of digressing, but yeah, I just wanted to. I agree with you. There's more activism than the Libertarian Party, for God's sake. There's more types of activism than you know, feeding the homeless. There's this concept of the Not Army that I was working on starting before my daughter got her diagnosis a year and 3 months ago, called the Not Army, and I'll probably pick this up again in the future when I have the bandwidth to do so. But the idea was, and just briefly, I won't go into it long, is that there are all these different types of activists, and there are people interested in doing different kinds of things. Like you're talking about, you know, sort of this mindful meditation thinking work. There's certainly space for philosophy and figuring out how to apply libertarian principle to everyday situations. And there's certainly room for charity, and there's certainly room for people that are interested in like security and defense and protection. And, you know, there's all these different types of activism, and all these different groups really don't intermingle that much. But when they do, it's hugely powerful. And so the concept behind the Not Army, which, you know, more information will probably come out in the future on, is it will be it'll be the threads that tie a bunch of disparate groups together in a voluntary way to come together for moments of activism. Feed the Need being a great example. You know, at Feed the Need, you have the people that are charity workers that, you know how to raise, find resources, find donors of resources. You have the militia types that run security and communication and medical. And you have the media producers, which is certainly a type of activism. They're producing media, covering it to share, you know, to amplify what's going on. You have the philosophers that are talking through the ethics of, you know, the government's control of peaceful behavior, feeding the homeless, and all this stuff. So there's room for, it's an event that brings all the different types of activism together. And so the Not Army is a concept to try and create as much more of that as possible by connecting people.
I think that's a great idea. I support that wholeheartedly.
Awesome. Well, I have enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for being one of the rare few that actually comes on the show to talk about the stuff that most people just bang keyboards on Facebook about. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me, Patrick.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thanks for watching, guys.
Have a good day.
And thanks, bye-bye. EG. Holy crap, EG. Take it easy.
EG, I'm also EG. I'm EG Belsey, so strange but true.
Okay.
I'm not. Right. I didn't donate that money. I'm not taking credit for that. I'm saying that my first name is Eric and my middle name is George.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Well, have a great day, man. Thanks again for the call. And hey, if you ever want to have another conversation, you're welcome back. Just drop me a message.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Have a good one.
All right, guys. And for those of you watching, I think we have one more live stream coming up around 3:30, give or take a little bit of time. We're going to have Sherry Voluntary on the show, and we're going to discuss a lot of the stuff that's been going on with the cops, especially the one in Dallas.